Hello everyone, welcome to another video. I'm Wibbert and this is one of my builds. It's another multiplayer build. I showed off the region that I'm playing in. It's a multiplayer region that Fredo hosted and I showed the region before and I wanted to do another video on it because I think the whole idea of doing a multiplayer region is pretty cool. And I also wanted to give a bit of an update on the city that I showed last time. In this video, I'm not gonna continue with this city. I did continue with the city a little bit, but it's pretty much done. There's a couple of rough edges that I still want to work on, but yeah, I just wanted to do a different kind of video because this city ended up being a pretty um, non-standard kind of city, and I kind of wanted to show how I would build a more standard grid-based kind of city. Um, well, how I would do that because I'm not sure if the way I'm gonna build the city is really something that a lot of people would copy or would think of when they build a grid city. So I think it's still a pretty interesting build. And I think the biggest part of it being interesting would be that I show how you can just get a big giant city within, yeah, a couple of hours. It really depends on how fast you want to go. And yeah, I took it a bit easy or slow. And I was also plagued by a bunch of crashes because I'll talk about that later, I guess, because yeah, so I had to cut a lot of the footage out because it was lost due to crashing, and I should have just saved more often, but I should have also checked to see if the yeah, I should have done a bit more in-depth research. So I'm just showing off the city that I built right now. Um, that's the area where we started last time, and as you can see, I added a lot of different stuff to it, a lot of different kind of building spawns. And here I'm preparing, so I'm sorry if that's a bit short. Um, yeah, so here I'm just preparing for the next city and I'm looking at the kind of percentages that I'm able to get in terms of growth stages. So this might be a bit of an unclear table, but as you go down the table, you can see there's a number on the left side. There's one for low wealth and there's one for high and medium wealth residential. And this number indicates the amount of population that you need for a certain stage to spawn. Yeah, the percentages show the amount of a certain stage that would spawn. Um, and as you might know, this region has like 2 million population and stuff already. So I was aiming, well, I was looking at what kind of percentages of low and medium density I would need in order to support as much high density as possible. And I think the percentages are in terms of number of buildings and not in terms of number of people living in a certain type of building. So yeah, here I started the grid, and in the bottom right corner you can see a little bit of a planning I did. I planned this grid in paint. I just zoomed in really far and then just dropped some pixels down. I had some idea of what I wanted to go for, and I also wanted a grid that could transition from low density into high density pretty well, and that would provide a bunch of extra space for high density. So yeah, that's the grid I came up with, and here I just started putting it down in a random spot, and yeah, just by coincidence, ended up lining perfectly to the one edge. So now not the edge where I'm at now, but the top edge from this perspective is where it ended up lining up perfectly. So I was pretty, yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize that until during recording this or anything, but afterwards I thought, wait, didn't that just randomly line up? And yeah, I'm pretty sure that it did. So that was pretty funny to me. Yeah, so here I started with some low density, and now I'm adding some medium density, and I gave them some water because medium density needs water. And yeah, so I'm not really adding a whole lot of low density because only 8% of all buildings needed to be low density. So if you get like 100 low density buildings, you can support, uh, well, let's say it would be 10% to make the math easier. So 100 low density buildings would already support 1000 medium and high density buildings. And it's even more nuts than that. And this little area, the two blocks that I built, I think it's already close to like 80 small buildings. So I don't really need to worry a lot about the low density, but the medium density is actually something that I kind of forgot to take care of because yeah, here I'm starting with some medium density and stuff, but pretty soon I'll just go into high density. Also because yeah, I just got well, I'm just a bit excited. I was a bit excited about getting some high density stuff going, and well, the area where I started to build, as I had it in mind, was gonna be high density, but I also had in mind that this medium density would like take over the corner, and it ended up being a bit different. I don't think it's I don't think it's really bad when you change your plans or you forget your plans and you build something different. I think the key in a game like this is to just keep building, and at some point you might want a plan or like a schematic for yourself or something, or just an idea that you can copy. And here I was thinking of an idea for some little overpasses for pedestrians, and I I came up with this idea in the other city because in the other city I had a bunch of sunken roads and sunken rails, and I thought the overpasses looked pretty nice over those. But here I didn't sink the road, so I had to elevate the pedestrian wall before going into that overpass. Or, well, you could just call it a bridge, I guess. I don't know why they have like different words for the same thing, because a bridge is just a bridge. Why would you need to call it an overpass in certain situations? Or why did some people just start calling something that was a bridge an overpass? But that might just be down to me not. I guess an overpass would be more specific about the type of bridge because a bridge can just be over water or whatever, and an overpass would imply that it goes over another type of road or just another road. It might be the same type of road, I guess. And here I started doing some high density industrial zoning, and at first there was some dirty industry spawning there. So um, I changed the taxes for dirty industry, and I think that could be a bit of a cheat if you just build a ton of dirty industry first and then just raise the taxes to like 15%, enough to keep them uh, from spawning in new areas, but also enough to keep them from moving out of the city completely. So that could be a bit of a trick to make some extra money. And I did struggle a bit for money. Well, I didn't really struggle, but I just wasn't making insane amounts of money, which made me a bit worried that I might be doing something wrong. But I don't think I was doing anything wrong. It was just a matter of getting more people into the city. And yeah, here I started my first bit of high density residential. Um, yeah, so this whole pet mall stuff, I did plan for doing the pet malls. I didn't really plan how they ended up looking, but I do like the way they look. I also plan to use subway stations in those square little bits because I thought it would be a good way to incentivize people to use the subway if it's that close to their homes. And because there's so many of them, um, I kind of reckoned that they wouldn't be super crowded, so the traffic noise that is produced by them wouldn't um, negatively impact the homes that would be nearby. I don't even know if they. I'm not sure that they do that, but it might it might have been from City Skylines that happened. Uh, but I thought I'd remembered that yeah, homes would get derped out by too much traffic noise caused by like subway stations. You don't really get any messages for that. You can select a building and see what kind of traffic noise, what the amount of traffic noise that is there. Yeah, here I noticed that there was a lot of pollution. So I used the Clean Air Act and the Reduced Automobile Emissions Act. They cost a bit of money. I'm not sure what it's based on actually. It might be the amount of industry in your city, but I think it's the amount of residents. So, yeah, if you can get most people to just not use pollutive types of transport, I think that would help you manage your city more easily, and it might save you some money on those ordinances later on. But for now, I think I needed it in order to, because um, yeah, buildings just, at least residential buildings, just have more trouble spawning when there's like negative factors like pollutions around. But pollution isn't. It can have a pretty big impact, especially for higher wealth. But I don't think I needed to worry about pollution all that much. But I did, and I yeah just enacted that city ordinance. So over there, I started very carefully zoning some high density because I didn't want to overwhelm the services that I was providing there. I wanted to make sure that the hospital, namely, because the hospital is the one that that has the most trouble providing for high density. So later on, I'll show you a trick, or maybe it's not a trick, maybe it's more of an idea or a method that I used in order to keep the hospitals from getting super overcrowded. I think it's just well, I don't know why I'm talking about what I'm gonna show later. Um, yeah, so here I'm upgrading the road network a little bit, and I decided to use these one-way roads because, well, they have the same capacity as an avenue. So, and I wanted something that was three wide for no good reason, really. At first, I had the idea where that this is where the three wide idea came from. I had the idea that I wanted to use the network widening mod because it has some super high capacity roads, and I wanted to use those at first. But then I decided to do the whole thing with the overpasses, well, I just decided to do the whole connected by pedestrian mall thing. And the problem with those roads is that you can't really do overpasses over them because there's no puzzle pieces for them. At least not that I could find. And yeah, so that ended up forcing me um, to use one-way roads. I think the one-way roads work out pretty well. They have like twice the capacity than a normal road because they take up twice the space, and uh, yeah, so they're pretty good on capacity. And I don't really want to, because I think different road types also have different speeds for the cars, and I don't want to use road types that have super high speeds for cars because that would incentivize more people to use cars because it's gonna be the fastest way to get to your job or wherever you need to go. And yeah, I just don't want everybody driving their cars around the city. There's enough people that are stubborn enough to drive the cars anyways. So yeah, I want to just support anybody who chooses to walk, and yeah, to just so yeah, that's a bit of a difference that I did for the whole plan or the idea that I did. I thought low density and for yeah medium density that the traffic impact would be so minimal that it was alright for them to just use roads. But for high density, there's always so many issues created when you start zoning high density. The traffic goes terrible. Your services become over over capacity. I don't know what the word is, but they over encumbered, I guess you could say. So I wanted to um, mitigate at least the traffic part by using the pad modes, and yeah, the services um, problems or issues I overcame by just plopping more hospitals and making the zoning in a shape that would support plopping down a hospital easily. And yeah, I kept the radius of the ambulance funding all the way to 0. There's a base radius to ambulances, so if you give them 0 funding, you're not spending any money on them, but you're still getting a whole bunch of coverage, which um, in high density areas is actually enough for them to already be overwhelmed by high density residential, even if you don't zone every little bit of the area that it covers. It yeah, it just takes like 10 buildings for it to take like 3,000 people. Maybe because there's this medical research center building, maybe that would relieve some of the stress on the. But I think it's a pretty small percentage. It's not like it's taking, I think, 30% or whatever. But I don't know the numbers really. Yeah, so here I'm doing a bit of a mixed zoning idea with some high tech very close to the residential. And the idea was that I wanted to provide the jobs that the people were gonna need within the vicinity. And at first I kind of thought that like 2 residential buildings would be satisfied by 1 commercial skyscraper building, but it seemed that that was not the case. And well, the problem with that was that my neighboring city um, had a whole bunch of extra jobs, which was reducing the amount of jobs that wanted to spawn here. So I had some trouble getting the 1 to 2 um, skyscraper stuff. Like 1 commercial to 2 residential skyscrapers, it just wouldn't work because the commercial skyscrapers wouldn't spawn. So uh, I was having some trouble providing the jobs or getting the jobs to spawn for them. And so I ended up just connecting to the neighboring city and allowing the people that um, yeah relied on the jobs or on the job or overflow that was being created in the neighboring city. I allowed them to travel to that city and just work there. Later on, I actually went to the other city, not in this video, but after this video, I went into the other city and tried to reduce the gap between jobs and residents. So here you can see me, um, yeah, trying to fix. Yeah, okay, you can just watch, and I already talked about this. So I went into the other city to make some more residential areas there, and I didn't really get it to an equilibrium between jobs and people, but it got a lot closer. And yeah, I don't know what kind of numbers you'd really want, but for a starting city, having another city nearby that has like 25,000 extra jobs is, uh, I think it might actually be okay, but it creates some issues for your infrastructure unless you have like a monorail going there or whatever. But in general, you don't have that in the starting city. Well, you could just do that, but yeah, here I was trying out some different intersection ideas, and I didn't really like the way they ended up looking. So I ended up using a different type of roads just for everything. I might do some experimenting with the intersections to see if I can get some turn lanes to work, but the ones that I tried just didn't work. And then I thought maybe I just disconnect it and try to make some little roundabout loopy kind of thing. And I didn't really manage to get something that looked interesting or good to me in that respect. So I thought maybe upgrading the one-way roads for just a little bit would be handy. And I think this could work. But to do that for every intersection, yeah, that's because there's no easy way to put them down. Uh, yeah, that's a bit of the thing that still makes me feel like Skylines, City Skylines is a bit better in those kind of things because it allows you to make your own custom intersections and save them and just plot them. And I actually did that for like a weird grid layout that was based on triangles and hexagons. And I used some yeah, the intersection tool to create the base for that grid. So I just, because making triangles and hexagons, it's easier in city skylines because it's impossible here, but it's still pretty hard to get those angles to work. Maybe there's like mods right now, but back then there weren't those mods when I did that. So I measured everything out and got as close as I could to the perfect equilateral 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 triangle. I've heard that word so many times, and people just say it too fast for me to to hear how it's spelled or how to pronounce it. I think it's equilateral triangle. I'm sorry, I'm derping so hard on this word. Yeah, I'm dyslexic by the way, so uh, yeah, I can sometimes have trouble with stuff that might seem ridiculous to you, but yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm like handicapped or whatever. It's just that some things are less natural to me. Um, but then some other things are more natural to me and might seem like magic to you. So, yeah, I sometimes have trouble with words. So, I'm gonna try the word again, equilateral triangle. Um, yeah, I just made like an intersection that had that shape um, because it was super hard to do it by hand. And yeah, I just used an intersection thing in City Skylines to plop down grids, and it was still a bit finicky. You still had to like really carefully rotate stuff and line things up. But yeah, I did a pretty fun city with that. That was just a bunch. Well, it started out as just a whole bunch of hexagons, and then I had a different idea and made a different intersection thingy. So I had another area with a different yeah, theme or schematic to it. And yeah, but I had some pretty good times in city skylines. At one point, I decided to do a city that was based on like the golden rule and the way that like a snail house, like the shape of a snail, um, that relation between that and the golden rule, I used that to make like a snail shaped city. So a big spiraling humongous city, and then in another um, area I used some, I can't really remember what other mathematical rules I used, but I used a different mathematical rule to define. I think I used a fractional. Frac, yeah, I used like a fractional pattern to create the road layout. So when you zoomed in, it showed some of the similar shapes, but it was pretty hard to do that without derping out your roads completely because of the capacities and stuff. But yeah, I think if you look at it and you know what you're looking at, then you'd recognize the fractional. Hmm, what do they call those things? Yeah, I think it's a fractional. I don't know. It's like one of those patterns, like the Mandelbrot set. If you don't know what that is, it's a pretty interesting concept. But the principle of it is that there's mathematical ways to describe patterns that allow you to end up with a pattern that always repeats itself. Or well, if you zoom in, you just keep seeing the same pattern again and again. And I suppose just a simple spiral already does that. If you have like an infinitely scaling spiral, you can always keep zooming in on that. Uh, those things don't exist in real life because there's always like a smallest particle or smallest unit of space that something can take in. So it's purely mathematical, but they do help predict some types of behavior in the real world, or explain, or just calculate some things. So yeah, I think it was pretty interesting to try something like that, and it's in part for me using those kind of ideas to start cities and define their shapes is in part me wanting to see how such an idea would end up, but it's also a bit laziness because it just helps me uh, yeah, like zone a whole big area of a city without having to think and having to plan everything meticulously. And yeah, I did want something that looked unique, that looked like a grid. Here I saved, and here I had a crash, and here I had another crash. Um, the crashes were related to the network add-on mod, and there's already a fix for that. And we did have the fix in the multiplayer folder, but the problem came from the fix being installed in the wrong way. The fix is a DLL file. Um, yeah, that doesn't really mean too much, but it's a type of file that needs to be in your plugins folder itself, and it can't be in like a nested folder. So you can't have a folder in your plugins that's called SimCity for fix and put the file in there. You actually need to put it in the plugins folder itself. And that has to do with the way the game loads things. And I think it just needs to load the DLL first. So the way the game loads like your plugins folder, is it starts with the files that are just directly in the folder, and then it looks at the folders alphabetically and starts loading stuff in that alphabetically. So yeah, it first loads the files directly in the folder alphabetically, and then the content. And here I wanted to do a bit of a pattern, but it looked a bit too much like that Nazi symbol, so I decided to yeah, it's really quick, but yeah, I don't want to make weird messages to people that might misunderstand, and I don't want to offend anybody because yeah, it's a sensitive uh, subject, but there's also good reason for why it's sensitive because yeah, racism in any form is just stupid and bad. So I didn't want to like um, yeah, I didn't want to make weird communications or I don't want to spread bad ideas. So I decided to not use the swastika. It's another word. I do know that word, but yeah, it's just a bit hard to pronounce for me right now. Maybe I'm just a bit tired or whatever. Um, so I did some commercial areas. Yeah, so what I'm the way I'm deciding which area should be what is not really as planned out as I was planning to do it because the whole 1 to 2 method didn't work out. So I started to do some areas that were more commercial related, and then I did the school or the university, and I wanted to do a bit of a fancy neighborhood around it. So I built a city hall there, and then the stock market that fitted pretty nice, and then the opera house. No, it's not the opera house. The opera house I built later, but this is the museum, the city museum. You can get the museum just by plopping down 5 small museums, and that already unlocks it. You just have to run your city for like a little while, and then you can just get the big city museum, which is like 10 times more efficient. So, and the same goes for the central library. The central library ended up costing me like $50 a month when a single library was already costing me close to 200 a month. So, uh, before and after it went down to like $17 a month. So it can save you like $500 a month if you do the main library thing and uh, the museum thing. And you don't really need to build a library or a museum to get high education, but it does increase the speed at which new people that move in get that high level of education that they need for good jobs and stuff. And this is one trick that I learned from the Network Adam Mode manual. It's how you can, yeah. But I also learned this one. Uh, yeah, if you don't want to read the whole manual, uh, I can try to like condense the manual into a bunch of simple tricks or simple steps that you can do in order to build these kind of real intersections. Because it's a bit of an overwhelming manual, in my opinion. So I can understand if you would like some pointers. But if you're okay with just reading it and testing it out, but I think those because I wanted to do a big central station, and this is not a big central station. At least from the standards that I know, a big central station would have at least like 10 rail lines. Uh, yeah, 10 tracks at least going in, and the one where I used to live had like 23 or 26 tracks, I believe they went up to. Um, so, but that would cover like a quarter of my town in rail track, and I think I'll not in this video, but I want to probably increase the number of tracks over here because yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting to have a more realistic type of central station. And I did like the arched stations and the way they ended up looking. Yeah, I'm not really proud of this build that I'm doing here, but I did like the arch station and the way they like ended up looking together like a big, yeah, big central hall or station kind of thing. Although the arch is technically the wrong way around in relation to the direction of the tracks, but whatever. Let me have my own fantasies about that. And I guess I could have gotten a custom station, but then this is the multiplayer region where the mods that you can download is yeah, it's not really limited because you can just suggest it, and I think um, the one who created this multiplayer region, Fredo, uh, he wouldn't have too much of a problem with you suggesting a mod like that probably. But yeah, I don't know. I don't wanna like impose. I guess maybe I shouldn't feel like I'm imposing. Maybe I should just feel like I'm improving the collection of mods that we're using. Um, okay, yeah. So why did I build this whole rail station and stuff? Um, in the main part is because the neighboring city already had a rail station, and that city had a rail station and stuff, and a whole rail network, which yeah, I kind of showed maybe at the beginning of the video, but probably didn't do too good of a job on. Um, but this whole region has a pretty extensive rail network already, and I think rail is using rail for passengers is a pretty efficient uh, way of transporting like a whole bunch of people, because you can get like um, yeah, the rail capacity is like at 25,000 people or something. Um, and it's pretty easy to get like 10 tracks or whatever amount of tracks you want to use of rail going. So, but I didn't do that in this city. I just went for the 4 tracks to start off with, and I connected one of the 4 just to another neighborhood in the city because I thought it would be, well, it's not a neighborhood really yet, and it won't be in this video, I believe, because at some point I was just recording for so long and I had all those crashes that I showed. So I wanted to wrap it up, and here I had this idea of using um, plazas. You can use any type of plaza for this idea, because we don't have any kind of wall mod or whatever to like beautify the slopes. You could use um, the pavement pieces, but I kind of liked the way the plazas looked from the side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the plazas to decorate the sides of the sunken rail to make it look like it has some bricks. There I'm just planting down some more low density commercial. Um, yeah, um, at this point I'm just checking on the services and stuff to make sure that everybody's still a bit happy. Um, yeah, so this city is going pretty smoothly so far. I'm already at like 180,000, pretty close to that. And I haven't really run into issues with money or whatever. And the trick was to not spend a ton on ambulance and school bus funding. And I don't think that's a cheat because high density just overwhelms uh, any type of hospital anyway, and schools are easily overwhelmed as well. I've had some pretty big cities that had some, and then you end up having to plant extra schools anyway, so you might as well just not waste a ton of money on funding for them first and just um, it also kind of connects to the whole idea of getting people to walk, because if you have people walking to school like when they're kids, and well, maybe the parents walk with them when they're very young, and then later the kids are like independent enough to walk on their own. Yeah, here I just saved because the network add-on mod stuff was I recognized by that point that the network add-on mod was it's not really the cause of the problem because there's already a fix. But if you don't have the fix installed correctly, then you might still get some annoying crashes when you're working on overpasses and stuff like that. It has to do with transit enabled lots, and I can't really explain that in a quick and uh, easy way. So I'm just not gonna, because there's like forums on the internet about these kind of issues and stuff. So uh, I don't feel that I have to explain things that you can just learn for yourself. So here I made this little, or the pretty large L shape. Well, you can't really see it because I'm planning the next neighborhood already. Um, but I'll talk about that a bit later because I'm gonna be doing some more work on it. It's gonna be a park. Let's just spoil the fun, I guess. Well, it's not really spoil. Yeah, so here I use some other plazas, and I'm not sure because um, it's not really a straight line. I'm not sure how much I mind that. There's a bit of a height difference, so it makes a bit of a downward like bend, and I don't know. I think it kind of looks cool, but I don't know. I'll just keep it like that. The only weird thing about that whole plaza idea is that plazas don't have fences, and I reckon that, yeah, I'm pretty sure that you'd have a bit of a fence uh, next to like a major rail hub. But in vanilla, there's nothing that you can put down that provides a form of fencing. So yeah, we just have to sacrifice a little bit of realism for getting a little bit of other type of realism, because yeah, I don't know, maybe the plazas look a bit derpy because they repeat like that and they all have this statue in it and some stuff. But there's no other lot that at least no other park lot that you can plop down like that, and that has the um, property that they raise the land and stuff and make themselves flat and provide some brickwork on the sides. Um, I'm pretty sure that there's only plazas in vanilla for that. So yeah, I don't know. It might look weird, it might look without the fencing, but I think you wouldn't really see the fencing from this far anyway, so if you don't zoom in, then it's alright. Might end up zooming in though, but whatever. Yeah, so in this city, I'm only using the Houston architecture because I thought they had some interesting looking skyscrapers. The downside is that they only have like two tier 8, maybe three. I think they have three tier 8 or growth stage 8 buildings, and maybe a bit more on the growth stage 7. But for high density, there's not like a ton of different buildings, and I think in part that is because you're not kind of they didn't design this game to have just one architecture style per city. Maybe that's the um, part of the idea. The other part might be that when you're designing a game like this and uh, you're deciding how much effort and energy to put on certain things, then you also have to think about how many people are actually going to use and see this. And I think it was a pretty wise decision of them to, um, yeah, to not spend too much resource on making growth stage 8 buildings, because it's a pretty hard game. If you haven't had as much practice as me, then um, yeah, it might look super easy like this. Um, and maybe in this multiplayer region, it actually is super easy. I don't know if that helped me out a lot, but I've gotten pretty good at managing the cities and stuff and keeping from, finding good ways to solve problems without wasting too much money. Part of the problem, I think, of learning this game is that you tend to assume, at least I've always done that in games like this, I always tended to assume that the advice that the game would give me was good advice. but mm, there's a very big nuance to that advice because, in part, the ideas might be good, but yeah, I've never really seen a game like this that actually gave advice in a way that actually explained the mechanics that you're working with. Um, yeah, no, I don't remember that I've seen that. And I think that's part of the problem because if you don't know the mechanics, then you can't um, play around with them and learn what you're dealing with and how it feels to. Um, yeah, I don't know. Um, yeah, there I placed the Opera House, and this mod pack, or the mod pack. I guess you call it a mod pack, but it's not really a pack of mods that you can just download. Although if you log into this, or if you join the region, then it is a pack of mods that you can just download. Although, yeah, typically I guess it's not allowed for you to download a ton of mods. But yeah, the idea here is just for a multiplayer region. We're not really distributing it. Um, we're just using this way of sharing the mods in order to make sure we all have the same version and we don't get third party stuff like that. Um, and we have a level playing field because, yeah, you could have one player with some weird mods that just gave them $1 billion every second or whatever, or just removes all crime from a city, or just uh, yeah, we decided that we wanted, or the host of the region decided that he wanted a region where the challenge of the game isn't mitigated by using cheaty mods, and although it's already plenty mitigated by the amount of work other people put into this region, and um, how easy it makes that for a new city to grow like this. Because in the end, if you cut out like all of the crashes and stuff, um, this ended up like it's like 40 minutes times 6. It's 4 hours of work, and that is from 0 to 250,000 residents. I hope you liked this video. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'd like to see you again. Goodbye.